Welcome to the Sacred Emergence Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Wong, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. This is a place where you'll be guided to living your most aligned life so that your truest, most radiant self can emerge. We'll be jamming on topics ranging from spirituality, entrepreneurship, to wellness and lifestyle design, and everything in between that can support you to grow, evolve, and shine, all the while not taking ourselves too seriously. So if you're ready to step into your leadership, break through limiting beliefs, own all of who you are, and expand in abundance, grab yourself your faith cup of tea and let's dive in. Hey friends, this is Michelle Wong. Welcome to the Sacred Emergence Podcast. As promised, at the end of season 5, I mentioned that before I launch season 6, I will be dropping a la carte episodes as I feel inspired. And this is one of them. So as I'm recording this, it is January 22nd, 2024. So first off, Happy New Year. I know it's like we're more than 3 weeks into 2024. And I shared in one of my Facebook posts that I think it was only like the 3rd or the 4th of January. And I was like, I feel like I've lived 100 years since January 1st. And so here we are. And I trust that all of you who are listening are having a good start to the year and that you are well. So I felt inspired to share some really cool updates and in my life. If we are connected on the socials, you might have seen me talk about it and drop some hints. But I have updates and I'm really excited. And mostly I feel like what I'm sharing would be beneficial. So the invitation as you're listening to this is to have an open mind, especially if you are not spiritual, to keep an open mind because I really feel like this is available for everybody, so long as you have an open mind. So let me rewind a bit. And so this is story time. I don't have any notes. I'm just sharing straight off of, my life events. So I invite you to have a cup of tea, sit back, maybe you're driving, and just like enjoy story time. And then I'll put links in my show notes for links, obviously that for references that I'm going to be pointing you to. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, or even from last season, season 5, you know that I was let go of a job that I really, really loved. And that was over 8 months ago that happened, right? So sometime in May. And I've shared, actually I've written a post about this and just shared a little bit about my journey around how, I don't know what it is around entrepreneurship, but sometimes it's like, it's one or the other, right? Like you have to have, if you're going all in business, why do you have a job? Like for whatever reason, it has to be one or the other. And I think that's such, it's really harmful to have any messages like that because our finances is part of our root. It's part of our, like in our day and age of where we live in the world, we need money. Of course, if you are in a different economical system, there are still societies that do barter. Like the people that I study from in Peru, like the elders in Peru, they have a very different way of living with nature. And it's a very community, collective way of living that's completely different, right? But most of you who are listening to this are in North America. It's a very nuclear family type of thing where it's not a village mindset per se, right? Anyways, all that to say is I'm a very huge fan of get a job, have something stable financially as you are growing a business. I think that is so smart to do. And otherwise, it's like feast or famine, mostly famine, if you're trying to get a business off the ground. Anyways, all that to say is I did take a break from my business back in 2021 and most of 2022. No, that's not true. So I'm getting all my years mixed up now since we are in a new year. So I took a big chunk of 2022 and 2023 off from business. I just needed a break. And
decided to get a full-time job, and that was very nourishing and very resourceful for me. It actually, like, heading back to a job with a company that I just really aligned with and really loving my coworkers, that really changed the game. And it was just like this was like it does exist, right? Good companies exist out there. And it heals my relationship to just burnout in the corporate world. And it was like perfect. And unfortunately, I was let go because, yeah, like the tech industry is never really 100% all the time. And anyways, it's also really good to have an emergency fund account. And I think I've shared this, and I will share it again, and I'll put in the show notes. Please get the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And do the exercises. Like, I spent thousands of dollars doing like investment stuff for women, and like, I'm not an idiot when it comes to investing. I am very, like, I'm confident in investing in the stock market. Like, I'm not afraid to like put money aside and let money grow. You know, and Ramit Sethi breaks it down. And anyways, I just wish I'd read his book when I knew about it in my early 30s, and I waited like a decade later to actually crack open the book. Anyways, so that's a little side note, a little PSA. Okay, so this episode is the story around after 8 months of really, I was looking for a new job. When I got let go back in May last year, I mean, I was looking pretty consistently on a weekly basis for a new job because cost of living is not cheap in Seattle, and I wanted to stay in Seattle. I decided that I wanted to stay in Seattle. Cost of living is not cheap, and so it was like Operation Find a Job. And I kid you not, like, it was the hardest 8 months of job searching. And I've never experienced something like this that was so intense in terms of like, it was mostly, a lot of it were crickets, or just a lot of like being ghosted by companies. And like, it was almost, but no, it didn't work out. Like, there were just a lot of non-starts. And so like, I mean, my financial runway was starting to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And literally, like, if I didn't find a job by the end of May or June this year, right, I would have to like move back home with the family. And I was like, oh my God, like, that is so not what I want to do, for a lot of different reasons. And it was just like, ultimately I wanted to stay in Seattle, and not move back home with parents in Canada and do like a over country move, like cross the country and up north, cross the border. Like, that was just like, if I were going to do that, I wanted to be on my terms, not like because of circumstances. So I was very like, constantly looking, and I knew it wasn't just me, right? Like, so that's just like a lot of coworkers I know of, people in the tech industry, stories that I've read on LinkedIn. It's been really rough for a lot of people. So none of this is, it's just no one's fault. Like, no employee's fault. Sometimes, shit just happens. And actually a lot of companies' fault because of mismanagement or just like, overestimation, whatever, right? For whatever reason. And then like banking systems, not always the most stable, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of different factors. So I unfortunately was part of the whole mix, and that really stressed me out. And I actually didn't know what my future looked like. Everything was kind of on a pause until I found a job. And I kid you not, like, when I did find a job, it was literally a miracle. So I wanted to share what happened, and I'm hoping this will inspire you to, So if you've heard me in past episodes, I've also shared that I'm not religious. I'm still not. I used to be Catholic, former Catholic, and I think most of you or a lot of you listening are also former Christian, former Catholic, former something. And so this episode is not me preaching in any way. I'm just sharing with you my story. And I recommended this resource to a bunch of people. And everyone that I recommended it to who read the book was like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing it with me. This is so beautiful. So I just wanted to preface that as well. So let me rewind a bit. So last November, I picked up a book. First, I heard this podcast, and the author wrote this book, and it got my interest. And the book is called Take Back the Magic, and is written by Perdita Finn. And I heard her podcast episode, or her interviewed on Kimberly Ann Johnson's podcast. And I love Kimberly Ann Johnson's work. And Kimberly Ann Johnson, her podcast, I think is called Sex, Birth, and Trauma. Really good book, really good podcast, and I also love her work. Like Kimberly Ann Johnson wrote the book Call the Wild, Activating Your Inner Jaguar, and she also wrote the book Fourth Trimester, and is really around, fourth trimester is around after you have a baby if you are a parent, a caregiver. Anyways, so I heard her interview. Perdita Finn was interviewed on Kimberly Ann Johnson's podcast, and the book was called Take Back the Magic. And I was like, ooh, I actually want to read the book. It just seemed really interesting. It was a memoir. And but before I ended up getting that book, I ended up reading one of so this whole family. Perdita Finn has a daughter, and her daughter is also a writer, an author. So I ended up reading her book first because it came from the library. It was a physical book. It's really thick, and it's called The Madonna Secret. And if you've listened to me for a while, you know I'm a big fan of the feminine, Mary Magdalene, Black Madonna, like all of the feminine that's been written out of the Bible or distorted or rewritten to somehow trash the feminine. Like I am for the feminine. I have nothing wrong. I'm like a big Jesus fan as well. So I have no, like, it's for me, it's mostly against the church, right? It's just like power and control. But anyways, so, and also if you're listening to this and you are religious, this is no way to insult you. This is just my own journey that I'm sharing. So yeah. Anyway, and like, I totally respect your choice as well. Like you know what I mean? Like I totally respect your choice. If you are, Catholic or Christian or any other religion, I respect your choice, right? Like we all have I feel like spirituality, religion, all of that, it's very personal for each and every one of us. So I should say that as well. So anyways, so I ended up reading the book, The Madonna Secret. It's a fiction, and it's written by Sophie Strand, which is Perdita Finn's daughter. Really great book. I read it throughout Thanksgiving. I have it on audiobook, and I had it on a physical book. So literally, like when I was driving, I would listen to the book, and then when I got home, I found where I left off audible book-wise and continued on in the actual book. And it was a really good book. It was basically just a little synopsis. Basically, the story of Mary Magdalene. Fiction, so it's not true story per se, but it's like an alternative story about Mary Magdalene. And so I enjoyed the book. I read it in less than a week. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to read Take Back the Magic. So I read Take Back the Magic, loved it. And then her husband, Perdita Finn's husband, Sophie Strand's father, Clark Strand, he wrote this book. He wrote a few books. I think they've all written a few books. But Clark Strand wrote the book, Waking Up to the Dark. And I really love that book as well. And all of these books have this thread of the divine feminine. And so I really like that book. And it just made me be really open to read a book that I knew they have written, husband and wife, but for whatever reason, I was really resistant to it. And a few years ago, a dear friend, a mentor of mine, recommended me this said book. And I was like, cool. I might have borrowed it from the library, but I never really cracked it open. So I went back to the library. And after reading 3 of the family's books, I was like, I think I'm ready to read this one now. And that book's title is called The Way of the Rose and is written by both Clark Strand and Perdita Finn. And they have an audiobook as well. If you have, this is like, if you don't know this, if you have a paid membership with Spotify, they give you 15 hours free monthly of audiobooks. And I mean, a lot of the books are available on there. Some you have to buy. So The Way of the Rose is also available to listen to, and then I reborrowed it from the library. And I started reading it. And this time I was way more open to it. I think I resisted the first time because it's talking about the history of the rosary. And I've always identified the rosary as being part of the Catholic Church. And although I knew it, like the origins of the rosary probably wasn't part of the Catholic Church per se, because, you know, you have like Tibetans or monks, they have like the mala beads. You know, it's a way to really stay grounded as you pray and meditate. But growing up Catholic, you know, I was familiar with the rosary and I had a few rosaries, but I never really prayed the rosary. It wasn't really my thing. But I own a rosary. I have a rosary. It is it's made of olive wood, handmade, and it has the crucifix on it. And I bought it years ago when I still went to church, went to mass, and somebody from Jerusalem was selling them. It was handmade from Jerusalem, and I bought one. And so I own one, but it was always like in my little jewelry box, you know. And so that's my relationship with the rosary up to this point. But I started reading the book, The Way of the Rose, and it was just so beautiful. It talks about the divine feminine and how it's not just necessarily, you know, the Virgin Mary, Mother Mary, and the word virgin really means a woman unto herself. It doesn't mean a woman who has never had sex yet. So FYI, that's what Virgin Mary, like virgin, means, a woman unto herself, like an empowered woman. That's what it means. But again, words get twisted and all of that. So I started reading it. And it's beautiful. And they talk about, like, you know, in the book, they talk about, they don't really even know the origin of the rosary, but there's stories of, and like, you know, visions of Mary. And previously it was more like devotional, where they would use roses to honor the Divine Mother and just honor the feminine through roses and flowers. And I love that so much. When I studied with the elders in Peru, virtually, so I was in Seattle, they were in Peru, the elders, a lot of what I learned was around connecting and being in relationship with nature and making nature offerings. And I found, like, a lot of times what I felt called to do the most was to gather flowers, wildflowers, calendula, all of that, and like blow prayers and wishes into these flowers and send them off into the water. And then I did that quite a few times this summer. Now the flowers, a lot of them are dead because it's so cold in the past few weeks in Seattle. So I wanted to do it again. I'm like, okay, I probably have to buy flowers at this point because a lot of them frozen and melted during the negative 10 Celsius degrees weather we had a few weeks ago. But anyways, in the book, it talks about, like, not even Mother Mary, but Mary Magdalene, Isis, Kali, like a lot of the divine feminine deities, if that's the right word, like across the world, right? Across like different beliefs, like honoring the feminine energies. And so the book talks about that in The Way of the Rose. And also talking about their own journey. So Clark Strand, who's the husband, like, he was never Catholic, not even Christian. I think he was more like Buddhist, if anything, but he's no longer even that. And then his wife Perdita I'm not sure. I think she was spiritual, but I don't know if she was ever Catholic. So like they even share their journey around their resistance to like, what does it mean if we start praying the rosary? And there's a whole story in the book of how it came to be, of how they ended up being more connected with Mother Mary. And that just, when I read all of that and how, because I'm a big Mary Magdalene fan. And also like in my culture, you know, there's Kuan Yin, like there's different goddesses that are just, you know, holds different energies. So I really liked that in this book. It just opened up and expanded the possibilities of what it meant to really honor the feminine. And also lots of stories of, and what I loved about each of these stories that they were sharing, obviously I'm encouraging you all to read the book. It's a really good book. It all tied back to embodiment, being in the body, being grounded in earth, and really tying it back to our love for the earth and the soil and the dirt. And this is what I'm all about. So after reading that book, or even before I finished reading the book, I was like, one night, because in my mind, I was like, I don't want to pray the rosary until I get my rosary. Because although I had a rosary, like I have one, I look at it, it's made of olive wood, so it's brown, and there's a crucifix on it, and there's nothing indicating Mother Mary or anything feminine. If anything, it's very masculine, which is fine, but like, I really like, there's no flowers on there. And I was like, I want my rosary. I want one with roses. I don't want the crucifix on there. And I was like, so I wanted to wait until I got one before I started praying the rosary. And there's a lot of them on Etsy. There's actually one that my friend and mentor who I mentioned, who recommended me the book a few years ago, like when she recommended me the book a few years ago, she also sent me a link to a rosary that she bought that was roses, no crucifix. It was just very feminine. And I was like, ooh, I like that. But at that time, I wasn't even in the realm of like, I was still like, yeah, I don't know if I want to invest in all of this and time and energy. So like I was still reading the book and I was like, I don't want to pray the rosary yet or do anything with it until I actually have one that I like. But I was so inspired one night, and this was like maybe January 1st of this year, January 2nd. I don't remember. It might have been the 1st or the 2nd. I don't know. Anyways, I got so inspired one night as I was reading the book that I just pulled out the rosary that I had, the one that's olive wood, and I prayed one decade, right? So if you're not familiar, there's this whole system on the rosary. If it's more structured, if you want it to be more structured, there's like 10 Hail Marys, and then there's like the Our Father bead. There's this whole thing to it, but really, like if you read the book, they're like, you can do whatever you want with it. You don't even have to like pray the rosary. You can just hold on to it. It could be like your worry beads, or you can pray your own thing. Like it was just like, I just appreciated how open they were. And also like, as I was reading the book, I was like, well, I'm open to doing it more, I guess, traditionally, but I'm going to change some of the words to the prayers. So I did. So I prayed one decade. And I added to the Hail Mary prayer. And I did that for there's 5 decades. So you're supposed to say at least 50 Hail Marys, and 5 Our Fathers, at least, right? There's this whole process to it. But I did one with my eyes open, and I really liked it. And I felt like, I don't know, I just felt more grounded in my body. I felt close. Like, I don't know, like I felt like I wasn't alone, and not in a creepy way. I just felt like somehow I was being energetically supported. Like I felt that. And this was in the start of the year. So I was, oddly, when I attended a breathwork, and when I attended the breathwork, it was at the end, it was December 31st. I decided to do it. And at the first song, like I just experienced a lot of grief from past, like as a child. I'm not going to get into it. And then so the next day I was just thinking about it, and like the tears came again. So I allowed the tears to come. And I think that was also what compelled me to pick up the rosary and just like, I don't know, send some prayers and also like some wishes and just like basically sending all my worries into these beads. And I just, went to sleep. And the next morning, I decided to pray another decade. And then, like, for whatever reason, the more, like, after I prayed another decade, I was like, okay, like, I'm feeling like I really want acupuncture session. Like, I really would love to get an acupuncture session. I haven't been in a while, but like, 2 weeks ago or maybe a week ago, I looked at the appointment for my acupuncturist and she was pretty booked. She was booked until, like, the week of the 10th. I was like, I don't want to wait that long. I want one now. But at that time when I was looking, there was nothing available. So I was like, okay. So like that morning after I prayed that decade, I just like, oh, what the heck? Let me see if there's maybe someone canceled and there'll be something for this week. And this is like, the first week of January. So I pulled it up and I went to the website and I kid you not, there was an opening for that very day in like an hour and a half from when I looked at it. So let's just say it was like 8 o'clock when I pulled it up. She had an opening at 10:30 that day, and I was like, oh my god! So I took it. Like I signed up for it, and I was like, oh my gosh! Like, is it because like Mother Mary is supporting me? Because in the book, the authors talk about like how the connection and how Mother Mary and whomever you are praying to, right? Like I'll just say Mother Mary, but forever it could be Isis, it could be Kali, it could be like whatever feminine deity. In my mind, they're all connected. Like there's a whole network of like the feminine supporting us, right? And I just felt like this. I don't know. Like I personally, I don't think it was a coincidence. I really feel like Mother Mary heard my prayer and was like, okay, I'm going to help you along, right? Because I did feel like I wasn't alone. And I was like, cool. So I signed up, got my appointment, and I was just very, like, I needed that. And then I continued praying the rosary since then. And I don't do the whole rosary. Like, I don't do 50 prayers a night. I at least do one decade. And then I add more to it. And then I also have the Miraculous Medal. So the Miraculous Medal is I'm sure if you're listening and you've been to a Catholic church or you've seen Catholic pictures or you've seen pictures of Mother Mary, there's one of her just like with her hands out and she's kind of in this robe, that one. And there's like rays of light coming out of her hand. And if it's clear enough, she might be with serpents underneath her. I have a little medallion that I got in high school and I still have it. And so I wrap that around my rosary just to have a little bit more of like the feminine. And so that's what I did to embellish my rosary. And I just decided that right now I'm just going to keep what I have because it's working. I'm keeping what I have because it's working. But you don't really need a rosary to pray to the divine feminine or to like Mother Mary or the Holy Mother, however you want to say it, call her. You can just pray. But anyways, so this was back same week of January 1st. And I was like, well, I need a job. So I'm here for a job and it would be so great to have one by the end of this month, January. Because time is coming close. My runway is shortening. I need a job. If I can like put in what kind of job I want one that really respects people. Like they put their people first. They treat us like humans. There's really great work-life balance. Hopefully with a company there, I really believe in their work. Like I really loved my last company. 100% like just I love the people. I love the work we were doing. I mean like I wanted a company that was very similar in terms of like all of that. And then like had good benefits in terms of like ability to take time off without having to like work for your time off. Like, like unlimited PTO would be fabulous or just have more flexibility, right? That was my ideal. and obviously paid relatively well, like paid well so I could live in Seattle because, the cost of living here is high. Anyway, so I kept praying. And that first week in January, I was supposed to go with my friend for like a New Year's walk, but we kept pushing it back because like schedule changes and there was weather. And so I ended up, I forgot what day it was. Like it was still in the first week of January, but I canceled on my friend. I was like, I just need to rest. I was in cocoon mode at the start of the year. I just didn't feel this huge rush to start 2024 off strong. I was like, I'm going to take my time. I'm still waking up I'm still hibernating. And so I ended up just staying in that day. But I was like, well, instead of a walk, I just pulled out my phone and I was like, well, I should see what jobs are available. And I kid you not, like I opened up LinkedIn and this job posting came across and I was like, oh my God. I know of this company, like somehow I was familiar with it, probably because in my last company, it was also in healthcare. And so when, a bunch of people got let go, they sent us resources for other healthcare companies. And this company was probably on the list. And I was like, this is so up my alley. I read the job description and like this job was written for me. And I applied immediately. And I've applied to so many jobs since May of last year that from my experience and just from how things go, I just see my resume landing in this big abyss because there's so many applicants. It's like, I don't even know if they're going to see my resume. And so in the LinkedIn post, the recruiter also shared her email. And I was like, I think I should send her an email. So I crafted an email. And then I also reached out to, I am part of an alumni Slack channel. So I reached out to my alumni Slack channel from my former coworkers. And I was like, does anyone know of any contacts that work at this particular company? And my former chief of technology person responded pretty quickly and said, yes, so and like there are two people who work there. And so I reached out to them both. And then I sent a message to another one that I was connected with on LinkedIn, like same girl, but on LinkedIn. And then I was like, okay, well, I kind of still want to email the recruiter. So what ended up happening was I drafted an email and I reached out to a good friend of mine and I was like, hey, I would love your eyes on this email before I send it off. And then I was like, and also, anyway, so I was also thinking maybe I should hold off on the email in case one of my contacts at the company got back to me in time and can make an introduction, because that would be ideal, right? And I didn't want the recruiter to get bombarded by me. So anyways, my friend responded and she said, I won't have time until like this evening around 6:30. I was like, yeah, I can wait. So at 6:30, we got on the phone with my friend and I was like, hold on, let me pull up the draft. So I pulled up the draft and I kid you not, the moment I pulled it up, I get an email from the recruiter that same day. And she was like, hey, we would love to talk to you. Are you free next week for a 30-minute video interview? I was like, oh my gosh. So I told my friend, because we were on the phone, I was like, I guess this conversation is going to be moot because she just responded back to me. The turnaround time has never been that quick before. Usually it's like at least the next day if I were to hear back, right? But like I applied around like middle of the afternoon and I heard within 3 hours. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So, I was excited and I responded and then we got time scheduled for the following week on a Tuesday. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like at this point, I was like, I don't think it's a coincidence. Like I've been looking for a job like very intensely and also being really discouraged. I'm not going to lie. Also because I have another former coworker and he's going through the same thing that I was going through. And then I see other people that I used to work with. They also got laid off. And it's just a really hard time right now with layoffs. And despite what NPR says that the economy is picking up, I'm like, I don't know. At least that's not my experience at the moment. And so it's been really like frustrating, disappointing, and just like the future is this big black void of I have no idea what's happening. Like it's so unknown right now. So the fact that like suddenly this happened, and I've applied a lot of jobs on LinkedIn. So, and I've applied to very similar jobs, I should also say, that was also related to healthcare. And I also had people from my old company working there. And for whatever reason, like the connections, like it was just not happening, right? So the fact that this happened, like literally 2 days after I started praying the rosary, and the actual company itself is related to women's health, I was like, okay, like I really feel like I'm not alone here, and that the divine feminine, Mother Mary, it's like my prayer is literally getting answered, and it's because I started picking up the rosary. Like I kid you not. And the reason why I also say that is because in the book, The Way of the Rose, there's a lot of stories in there, and part of it, like part of the message in the book is like Mother Mary wants people to pray the rosary, also for the health of this planet. And so there's lots of, stories in the book and just like anecdotal evidence, right? Because there's no scientific evidence for this. And so I'm just like, okay. And I practice prepping, right? I'm reading the job description over and over again. I'm like, I don't want to fuck this one up. I just feel like I really want this job, right? And so I'm just really preparing, right? And I know like with the recruiter, like you just have to get past the recruiter in a way. Like the recruiter is the bouncer, so you have to like show the recruiter that you would be a great fit. And then it goes into the interview loop, right? And then it goes on to like the hiring manager, and then it goes into this whole interview loop and then because it's virtual and remote, then it's probably going to be over the next few days of working with different schedules. And the more I read this job description, I'm like, okay, like they're asking for quite a lot. And I know like not everyone is going to be a perfect fit, but I want to be able to show that I have range and all the things that they're asking for. So I'm like really prepping, and I'm like busting out former coding and just like warming my brain up again because it's been a while, and really like practicing prepping and like spending a lot of time and energy. And I'm just like praying the rosary like there's nobody's business. And when I meet with the recruiter, it's a really great conversation. We only talk for 15 minutes. And she says, in full transparency, I'm going to have you talk to the VP or the director of engineering. And when are you free this week to talk, right? Because that was Tuesday. And I was like, yeah. And so she's like, send me your schedule of what your availability is like for the rest of the week. So after we got off the call, I sent her some times, and then we got something booked for for Thursday that week. And now I'm like amping up my prep, and I'm studying, and I'm just like reading everything just to like refresh everything and make sure I know what I'm talking about. I'm just like, this is like my job right now is prepping for this interview, because I don't know if he's going to ask me tech questions. So I'm like preparing, and we got on the call. We talked, the appointment was just for 30 minutes. And it went really, really well. And he's like, I would love to hire you. And I was just floored. Well, he didn't say like, I want to hire you, like, let's make this happen. It was more like, if I could, I would hire you right now on the spot. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this has only happened one other time. But it was for not a full-time job, right? It was for I was contracting I was contracting. So like I went in for an hour. It was a tech interview. I met with the hiring manager, and he's like, yeah, well, I'll take you. Because it was like a contractor. So I think the commitment was less, like they can get rid of me if they didn't like me. But full-time, like it's a huger thing, and that has not happened to me before. And we talked about salary, and I asked for a little bit more because I'm used to being paid a little bit more. And he's like, okay, let me see what I could do. And he's like, you might not hear back from us because, our recruiter's out of town next week, and it was already like towards the end of the week. And he said, you might hear back from us like the following week if you don't hear from us. And I was like, no problem. So I'm like praying. And a few of my friends hear about this, and they're like sending off prayers for me. And the next morning I got a hire. Like I get a hiring letter, and with the offer, they also promoted me to match the salary boost. And I'm basically like, fill out paperwork and all the things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a job. And it's at a company that I wholeheartedly stand behind with their work. And it's around empowering babies and mothers. And I'm just so beyond thrilled. Like this is like, and it's just, I don't think it's a coincidence, right? Like I'm praying to Mother Mary, the divine feminine. I'm also channeling like Mary Magdalene, all of the other like feminine deities. I don't think I'm saying that right, but I'm just like all of the divine, sacred, holy, feminine, like what's been written out of the Bible and in this patriarchal religion that so many of us have been exposed to, that runs the world basically. And I never really, like, I would say the Hail Mary in Catholic school and when I was in Catholic school, but I'll be honest, I never felt like this connection with Mother Mary. I felt more with Mary Magdalene, just Mary Magdalene's story. But when I read The Way of the Rose, something shifted in me and I decided to pray the rosary. And I was like, wow, I'm forever transformed. And so I start work next week, and I've not been this excited for a very long time. Well, I was this excited at my last job before I got started, because I just knew, like the first conversation I had with actually like the recruiter and with the hiring manager, I just had such a good feeling, and that was my same experience at my last job. Anyway, all that to say is that I'm just beyond. I was like, I wish I prayed the rosary sooner. Anyway, so that's my celebration story. That's an update. It doesn't change any of my offerings. I'm still leading breathwork. In fact, I'm leading a breathwork this Sunday, January 28th, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. And initially, the theme was going to be breathwork for prosperity, given that we're getting close to the Lunar New Year and we're heading towards a full moon, celebration vibes. But after the whole job situation and me starting to pray the rosary, I just felt called to change the theme. And it's breathwork for the feminine. And everyone is invited. I'll put a link in the show notes. And yeah, you're welcome to be skeptical for sure. I think that's always healthy to have a healthy dose of skepticism. And also, I invite you to read the book, The Way of the Rose. And yeah. And I wanted to say this. So I mentioned like the medallion. I think it's called the Miracle Medallion. The one that I was describing, like with Mother Mary with her hands open, and she's with serpents underneath her. So in the Catholic Church, the story is that Mother Mary is crushing and stepping on and killing the serpent because, of the story in Genesis, the creation story of Adam and Eve, and the serpent tempted them. Okay, so the serpent historically is a representation, it's a symbol of the feminine. And so in actuality, this medallion is the serpents with Mother Mary. She's gently with them. The serpents are at her feet. She's not stepping on them to kill them. It's in honor of the feminine. Of course, things get twisted. And so I'm a big serpent fan. I've always loved snakes. I always found them fascinating. And just a little side note, I had my Vedic astrology read by a friend of mine, and right now he's offering, at this time of recording, he's doing donation readings. If you're listening to this and you're interested, hit me up. I'll give you his contact information. And I loved my reading. I love astrology, right? I've done tropical, sidereal. I've never really had like Vedic astrology read. And so I was open to hearing through a different lens. And Vedic astrology uses Indian mythology. And I loved that. For me, the serpent energy is pretty strong in my chart. So yeah. Okay. That's all I had. If you're interested in attending Breathwork, link are in the show notes. If you wanted, I'm doing a special for January and February. If you do both of them, you'll save $10 total. But all the links are in the show notes. The one in February is happening at the end of February, and it's called Heartbreak Hotel. It's going to be fun. We're going to breathe around heartbreak, and this one is specifically for love and romance, heartbreak. It'll be fun. It's going to be a fun one. So that is available, and if you just want to do that one, wait around until that comes out. But I encourage you to do both, or at least join us for this upcoming Sundays. All right, thank you for tuning in. If this story has inspired you in any way, please share it. Tag me on Instagram at michellewong.xo. And obviously, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm pretty regular on Instagram. Like, I check my messages. So if you end up sending me a message, let me know. And highly recommend picking up The Way of the Rose. It's really good. And actually, all of their books written by the Strand family has been really good. Like, I think I've read most of their books. The husband has written a few more, which I'm trying to get. There's one that he's written that's related to, I think, Kali, that I think I want to read, but I just have to get access to it. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and happy 2024. More to come. Cheers. To help you feel more supported and nourished in your body and nervous system, you're invited to download the free I Am Supported meditation in the show notes. May you feel grounded in who you are as you become the fullest expression of yourself. Thank you for listening to the Sacred Emergence podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and thank you in advance for sharing with those who can benefit. Until next time.